Hi, Dr. Kara here. Today, in today's Q&A, we're going to try to answer a question I get a lot about nitric oxide, particularly how do I get it naturally from food? If you'd like, there's also a written article on the website called Increasing Nitric Oxide While You Eat. So I'd encourage you to read that one as well, but I'll try to cover it as much of it as I can here. Before jumping into the foods that can help you increase nitric oxide, let's answer the quick question, why? Why would you want to increase nitric oxide? Well, nitric oxide, the way I look at it at least, is an essential component of the body, something that the body has to produce. You can't really get straight nitric oxide from food. You have to help and or encourage the body to make it and or encourage the body to maintain high levels of it. Nitric oxide is critical for many processes in the body. Primarily though in blood vessels. It helps the body dilate the blood vessels, keep them open. It's one of the critical components between controlling circulation and blood pressure through its ability to dilate those blood vessels. Without it, blood vessels would tend to want to collapse, increasing blood pressure, diminishing blood supply. Those two alone make it quite critical. Again, the body has to make it. It makes it primarily through several ways. It does need nitrates. It needs a source to start with. Nitrates, which deliver primarily the amino acids citrulline and arginine. That's what the body needs for the most part to create nitric oxide. Of course, there are a number of enzyme pathways. I'm going to mention one as we go along, the synthase pathway, which takes arginine and makes takes it down the pathway of producing nitric oxide. So that's primarily why you would want to increase nitric oxide. Athletes know this very, very well. Muscles, stamina, endurance, they just don't do well when nitric oxide levels are low. They go to great lengths to try to take things to increase nitric oxide. Another important fact is nitric oxide, the body's ability to make nitric oxide diminishes with age. So especially as we advance in age, we need to give the body every little bit of help we can to promote the increased production and maintenance of nitric oxide within the body. Hopefully that summarizes why you would want to need it or even bother with it. So now getting into the actual foods, the first and most notable, notorious maybe even, beets. And it's, in terms of ways of increasing nitric oxide, nothing beats it from a straight food, so much so that I created a whole product around beets. Concentrated beetroot powder is a great way of increasing your nitric oxide. It is very, very rich in nitrates. In fact, if you look at all foods, it is probably the most rich in nitrates. Nitrates, as I mentioned earlier, the body can use almost directly to create nitric oxide. It's been studied quite extensively in both men and women, and it has been shown that eating 3 to 4 ounces of beet and or beetroot can increase nitric oxide, so much so there have even been some studies to show that it can help with support of blood pressure, heart, cognitive function, all of these things that you would expect to see when you increase nitric oxide, increasing blood delivery to all of these vital organs. The next on my list would definitely be garlic. Garlic, probably I would put it as number 2 because it's been studied more than most of the others, definitely less than beets. A lot of blood pressure studies with garlic to show that it's effective, and it has been studied and shown that following taking in of concentrated garlic, nitric oxide can increase by as much as 40%. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to last very long. It's believed to do this through nitric oxide synthase. As I mentioned, that is the enzyme that the body uses to convert or send L-arginine, the amino acid, down the pathway towards production of nitric oxide. And it's been studied and shown that it can do this. In my mind, there is no doubt that garlic can actually be quite effective. Next, and probably a favorite, dark chocolate. Where would we be without dark chocolate? Now you do want, if you're going to go down this road, you do want the dark cocoa extract. You don't want those dark chocolates out there that are full of sugar because you're sort of defeating the purpose at that point in time. Dark chocolate is rich, it's an antioxidant, but it's also rich in flavonols. And it's believed that the flavonols are what's responsible, because it has been shown to be able to increase and maintain, probably more maintenance of elevated nitric oxide levels in the blood. And so I would definitely add this to the list. Next would be citrus. Citrus through vitamin C. Vitamin C has been shown to increase the availability of nitric oxide. It's something that is easily added to just about any diet. Again, with citrus fruits, the only thing I always warn my patients about is you don't want to overdo it. It does have a lot of sugar. It is easy to add. Citrus, the vitamin C from the citrus fruits, you can get it even as simply as adding it to your water, eating it as a fruit, or just taking vitamin C for that matter. It's believed also to act through the enzyme nitric oxide synthase, which, as I mentioned, increases production of nitric oxide through the conversion of arginine, L-arginine, and push it through that pathway. Leafy greens. Where would we be without our leafy greens? It seems anytime I do research or do a talk on how to get nutrients from food, leafy greens has to be in that list. And they're called superfoods for a reason. Now, primarily for when thinking nitric oxide, you're primarily thinking spinach, arugula, and cabbage. Though honestly, a lot of the leafy greens, if not all of them, especially the darker leafy greens, they will help with the whole increasing nitric oxide battle. It's not sure, nobody really knows for sure. There have been some studies in terms of exactly how it does it, but it's very likely to be that they're just very rich in nitrate. So similar to the whole beets concept, leafy greens are very rich in nitrates, and so just by that and that alone can and will increase nitric oxide production and bioavailability. The few studies, the few little research I was able to find does show not necessarily measured nitric oxide levels, but certainly the bioavailability, that it did improve and increase the bioavailability of nitric oxide in the blood. Pomegranate. Not as well studied again as some of the other ones, but pomegranate, aside from being a potent antioxidant which can help protect the cells from oxidative damage, it's been shown in some research that it can help preserve levels of nitric oxide, which is believed to be how it affects its supportive effect on blood pressure. The research has been shown that pomegranate can help reduce blood pressure. I'm sure some of that is through its antioxidant qualities, its effects, but it's also believed that by preserving and making nitric oxide more available, that's another way it can help with blood pressure. This one might surprise you, watermelon. Watermelon, though, is rich in L-citrulline. Arginine and citrulline, as I mentioned, are two of the amino acids that the body can use and does use to produce nitric oxide. Again, this is one of those, the studies are clear enough on this regarding the citrulline and arginine conversion to nitric oxide that I actually developed a product based on that. My Boost NXT is citrulline and arginine-rich. Nitric oxide synthase in particular. This one was actually studied, interestingly enough. It was shown that watermelon juice, when taken for a few weeks, can actually increase the bioavailability of nitric oxide. So again, this is another one of those things that there is some research to show that it is effective. Meat. Not as studied as well. Meat is rich in CoQ10. CoQ10 has been studied extensively in heart health. And CoQ10 has been found in some research to help preserve, again we use that word preserve, right? So this is more of a nitric oxide bioavailability than a nitric oxide production. So meat has been shown to help preserve and therefore maintain bioavailability of nitric oxide through CoQ10. And by increasing CoQ10, you therefore can increase the bioavailability of nitric oxide. Again, CoQ10 has been studied a lot, honestly, when it comes to blood pressure, endurance, heart health. It can, as a result, it has been shown in some research, probably through CoQ10 nitric oxide bioavailability, but it has been shown to increase athletic performance and stamina. Another thing that CoQ10 has been shown in some of the heart health studies that were done, that it can help improve migraines, and that is believed to be through the effect CoQ10 to nitric oxide pathway. Red wine. This is another one that seems to come up a lot in a lot of different things lately, right? So red wine, again, powerful antioxidant. There's no doubt about that. That has been pretty much established a while ago. But it has, in some of the side research, been shown to increase nitric oxide in the body. Not clear whether there's a production mechanism or through its antioxidant qualities, but it is believed to have an effect on increased activity of the nitric oxide synthase. As we mentioned before, those do increase the conversion of certain amino acids, arginine, citrulline, primarily arginine, to nitric oxide. There are a lot of studies with red wine and heart health, red wine, blood pressure. Red wine, earlier I mentioned dark chocolate and citrus fruits, etc. You have to be careful with sugar. With red wine, I mean, I don't mean to state the obvious, but you do need to be careful with that one. Alcohol content, so you want to do that in moderation. Don't overconsume red wine just because you think it's going to help with your blood pressure. The amount of alcohol can actually end up doing the opposite, which can over time raise blood pressure, diminish the effect nitric oxide has on heart health. So you want to be careful again with that one. Last but not least, nuts and seeds. This one was interesting. A lot of research. It's well known that nuts and seeds are rich in arginine, in L-arginine. At this point in time, again, so much so that I created a product around it, my Boost NXT. Arginine will increase production of nitric oxide. There's actually a rather large study, 2,270 people, I believe. That was a good sized study, and it showed that increased consumption of arginine did increase levels of nitric oxide in the body. So again, that one's pretty much a done deal in terms of arginine to nitric oxide. Nuts and seeds are well known to have high levels of arginine. I would encourage this as a part of any staple. There are a lot of other, certain nuts are also very rich, as many of you well know. The omega-3s, which in my opinion, everybody's diet should be rich in omega-3s, but there you have it. I mean, arginine to nitric oxide, nuts and seeds would be an essential component of a list like this. In any event, I hope that was helpful. I'm going to wrap it up there. Again, nitric oxide, I would say it's actually critical. Low levels of nitric oxide in the body are just they not good in many ways. If you have any doubts about whether it can increase stamina endurance, help with fatigue, even through all of that, help you in terms of lifestyle changes, ask any athlete you know. They'll tell you. The evidence is out there. Athletes have been using products to increase nitric oxide for years and years and years.